debunked Cyrus Mistry, and today it was all about Tata Sons. The conglomerate has issued a statement saying it's beneath its dignity to engage in a public spat. This after Cyrus Mistry's 5-page letter was broken first on CNBC TV 18 yesterday. In fact, even the Tata Sons' response was broken first here on CNBC TV 18. The Tatas claimed that Mistry was given a free hand and he failed to show results. Arun Giri, who broke the Tata response first, joins us now with the details. Arun, yesterday was the explosive 5-page letter from Cyrus Mistry. It isn't a point-by-point rebuttal that's coming from Tata Sons in its official communication, but nevertheless, they have called the act by Cyrus Mistry of leaking that letter unforgivable.
Absolutely, and they've said a lot of things in the 2-page letter, which conveys what probably the management thinking is currently. They start by saying the correspondence makes unsubstantiated claims and malicious allegations, casting aspersions on Tata Group, the Tata Sons board, and several Tata companies and some respected individuals. These will be responded to in appropriate manner, the communication says. To the charge by Mr. Cyrus Mistry that he was a lame duck chairman. This is what the communication says. As the executive chairman, he was fully empowered to lead the group and its companies. It's unfortunate that it's only on his removal that allegations and misrepresentation of facts are being made about business decisions that the former chairman was party to for over a decade in different capacities. The record, as and when made public, will prove things to the contrary. It also goes on to say on the lame duck charge that the Tata Sons board gives its chairman complete autonomy to manage opportunities and challenges. But here is where a grave allegation is made against Mr. Mistry. The communication says, however, the tenure of the former chairman, Mr. Mistry, was marked by repeated departures from the culture and ethos of the group. And why was he removed? The reason given here is, it is unfortunate that Mr. Mistry had overwhelmingly lost the confidence of the members of the board of directors for a combination of several factors. Those factors, of course, have not been presented here. And they've given a hint, though. The directors of the Tata Sons board had repeatedly raised queries and concerns on certain business issues, and the trustees of the Tata Trust were increasingly getting concerned with the growing trust deficit with Mr. Mistry, but these were not being addressed. On that, we have one of the trustees, Mr. V.R. Mehta, who's actually opened up quite a bit and confirmed some of these points. And last but not the least, they're saying that there is a multitude of records to show that the allegations made by Mr. Mistry were unwarranted, and these records will be duly disclosed before appropriate forums if and when necessary. So probably the hint is that if this does get to a litigation, we will disclose it. Another point that we are hearing is that a point-by-point reply might be given only to Mr. Mistry and may not be made public. Of course, we'll try to get a hand on that.
Absolutely, but that was the official response that came in from the Tatas. But we do have an insight on the inside story, the top 10 reasons that could have led to the ouster of Cyrus Mistry, the explanation that the board has relied on to, in that sense, force Cyrus Mistry's exit from Tata Sons chairmanship. Arun, what are the top 10 reasons? And this is, of course, source-based information. This is not official communication from the Tatas. I must point that out. Absolutely
not official communication. But when you remove a director or replace a chairman of the board, that to a company like Tata Sons, then you have to make a case. That case has to be laid down, at least informally. The rationale has to be given to the board of directors of the Tata Sons to make up their mind. And we do believe that that case was made out, that a rationale was laid before the board, if not officially, at least informally. That case was laid. And what were the 6 or 7 points that stand out, as far as the case against Mr. Mistry is concerned? They say that Mr. Mistry had submitted a detailed note before the then selection committee in October 2010, before he became the chairman, setting out his views on how a large and complex group like Tata's should be managed. And he gave a comprehensive management structure with details of the composition and objectives of each component of the structure. It says that after 5 years, it is unfortunate that hardly any of his major views on the management structure have been implemented. And the one charge which Tata sources are again and again levying is that even the then existing structure of the group, which had stood the test for almost a century, that had been set by the visionary founders and generations of Tatas, that was being consciously and systematically dismantled by Mr. Cyrus Mistry, so that as a consequence the operating companies were drifting farther away from the parent company and its majority owners. Another point that we've been hearing from Tata sources for the last 24 hours is that this is for the first time or after a long time, the chairman of Tata Sons and the Tata Trust is different. And you earlier had a commonality between the trustees of the Tata Trust, the board member of Tata Sons, and the chief executives of some of the key Tata operating companies. That is no longer the case, and hence a governing structure was to be put in place, which Mr. Tata and Mr. Mistry agreed, which is why the articles were amended. And the current structure, according to the rationale given to the board members, the current structure was an unacceptable structure, and the situation could not have been allowed to go on. There are also certain financial parameters on which a case was made against Mr. Mistry. Number one, that TCS performance or dividend should not be factored in at all, because Tata Sons does not contribute materially to TCS's management and has provided no funds for the growth of TCS. But as far as the non-TCS companies, there are some 40-odd companies which contribute dividends to Tata Sons, and that dividend that Tata Sons received from these 40 companies declined from 1,000 crores in 2012-13 to 780 crores in 2015-16. And the dividend, the total revenue too was stagnant at about 2,200 crores, while the expenses like staff expenses, other expenses, rose quite sharply in the last 2 or 3 years. There was also little or no profit on sale of investments which had been agreed upon, and a planned list of divestments had been indicated, but nothing had moved on that count. Impairment provisions had risen almost 20 times or 12 times, 200 crores in 2012-13 to 2,400 crores in 15-16. And finally, they say that Tata Sons would have shown an operating loss over the last 3 years, but for TCS, which meant that Tata Sons was showing a total dependence on one company, that is TCS, and that had become a source of concern for the directors and the Tata Trust.
Absolutely.